The night the universe decided to change Liam Harker's life began with a storm. Not an ordinary storm, but a magnetic tempest that lashed across the barren surface of asteroid B-734, a forgotten rock in a forgotten corner of the outer rim that Liam had called home for the past 3 years. The electromagnetic disturbance painted the sky in shimmering curtains of blue and green, beautiful but deadly for any ship unfortunate enough to navigate through it. Liam watched from the viewport of his mining station, a generous term for what was essentially a collection of prefabricated modules bolted together and buried partially underground for protection from radiation and micrometeor impacts. The station had once been part of a promising mining operation before the company went bust, abandoning it along with several employees who couldn't afford passage back to the core systems. Now, only Liam remained. The steady hum of life support systems provided a constant backdrop to his solitary existence. He had grown accustomed to the rhythmic clicks of the moisture recyclers, the occasional groan of metal contracting in the cold of the asteroid's 16-hour night, and the soft beeps of monitoring equipment that kept him company in place of human voices. His dinner, a protein cube reconstituted with carefully rationed water, sat half-eaten on the small folding table that served as both dining area and workbench. Engineering manuals and spare parts cluttered the surface, evidence of his latest project, restoring an old atmospheric skimmer that might someday give him more range to explore the asteroid surface. Not that there was much to see beyond rust-colored dust and the occasional silicate formation, but it gave him purpose. Liam ran a hand through his sandy brown hair, now longer than regulation length would have permitted back when he worked for the Viridia Prime Flight Authority. The beard he'd grown since arriving covered a scar on his left cheek, a reminder of the crash that had ended his career as a pilot and taken the lives of 19 passengers and 3 crew members. His navigator, his co-pilot, and a flight attendant he'd been quietly falling in love with. Not his fault, the inquiry had ruled. Catastrophic system failure. But Liam knew better. He'd missed something during the pre-flight checks, had been distracted, thinking about asking Marie to dinner after they reached their destination. 19 passengers, 3 crew, 22 ghosts that followed him across the stars to this desolate rock. The alarm startled him from his thoughts, a shrill, urgent sound he rarely heard. The proximity detection system. Something was approaching the station. Liam's heart rate quickened as he moved to the control console. The system showed an object, small and fast-moving, cutting through the magnetic storm with an erratic trajectory. Too small for a standard ship, too large for natural debris. The track suggested it would impact approximately 2 kilometers from the station. Computer, identify approaching object, Liam commanded, voice rusty from disuse. Unable to identify. Composition analysis suggests artificial materials. Impact imminent in 47 seconds. Liam watched the tracking screen as the object plummeted toward the asteroid surface. There was a brief flare on the infrared sensors. Impact, then nothing. He should ignore it. Whatever it was, investigating meant going outside during a magnetic storm, risking equipment failure, and possibly his life. The smart choice was to wait until the storm passed. But 2 years of crushing solitude had a way of making even the most cautious man reckless for a change in routine. Log station status. Temporary departure for surface reconnaissance, he said to the computer as he pulled on his environmental suit, checking the seals with practiced efficiency. Estimated return in 2 hours. The surface rover, little more than a pressurized cab on 6 balloon wheels, started reluctantly, its batteries protesting the sudden demand after weeks of inactivity. Liam navigated slowly through the uneven terrain, following the coordinates of the impact. The magnetic storm interfered with the rover's navigation system, forcing him to rely on visual landmarks and dead reckoning. He almost missed it, a dark shape half buried in the rust-colored regolith, steam or smoke rising from its edges where hot metal met the cold surface. Not a ship, but some kind of escape pod or personal transport vessel. Its design unlike anything in standard human registries. The hull bore scorch marks that didn't match with atmospheric entry. Weapons fire. Caution told him to turn back, report to, well, There was no one to report to anymore. Curiosity and that same recklessness that had driven him out here pushed him forward. Liam parked the rover 20 meters away and approached on foot, the magnetic storm making his suit's external sensors flicker and stutter. The pod had cracked open on impact, revealing a dark interior. As Liam's helmet light swept across the opening, he caught movement inside. Someone was alive in there. With his pry bar from the rover's toolkit, Liam widened the opening, metal groaning in protest. What he found inside stopped his breath. A humanoid figure lay crumpled against what appeared to be a pilot's restraint system. Female in form, but unmistakably not human. Her skin was a pale blue with intricate, luminescent patterns that pulsed weakly across her exposed arms and face. Hair like spun silver framed delicate features dominated by large, almond-shaped eyes currently closed in unconsciousness. Dark fluid, blood, seeped from a wound in her side where strange, iridescent clothing had been torn away. For a moment, Liam stood frozen in indecision. In all his years in space, he'd encountered only 2 non-human sentient species, neither of which resembled this being. First contact protocols dictated caution, quarantine, notification of authorities. But the nearest authority was light years away, and this being would be dead long before any help arrived. The decision made itself when those eyes suddenly opened, revealing irises of brilliant amber that seemed to glow from within. They fixed on Liam with an expression of terror and desperation that transcended species barriers. One slender hand reached toward him, trembling, before falling limply as consciousness fled once more. Liam acted on instinct, carefully extracting her from the wreckage. She was lighter than he expected, despite being nearly as tall as his own 6-foot frame. Her body temperature, even through his gloves, felt several degrees cooler than human norm. The wound in her side continued to seep that strange, dark blue fluid. As he carried her to the rover, Liam noticed something glinting on her tattered clothing, a small metallic device no larger than his thumbnail, emitting a faint, rhythmic pulse of light. A tracker. Someone had been following her, hunting her. Without hesitation, he plucked it off and dropped it to the ground, crushing it beneath his boot. The trip back to the station seemed to take an eternity, with Liam constantly checking on his unconscious passenger. The magnetic storm was intensifying, making the rover lurch and stall. By the time he reached the relative safety of the station's small airlock, alarms were blaring from his suit's overtaxed systems. Inside, Liam laid the alien woman on his own bunk, the only suitable surface in the cramped station. Up close, in proper light, her alienness was even more apparent. The luminescent patterns on her skin formed complex designs that shifted subtly with each shallow breath. Her features, while humanoid, had a symmetry and refinement that seemed almost artificially perfect. 5 fingers on each hand, but with an extra joint in each digit, giving them unsettling flexibility. The wound in her side was his immediate concern. Without knowing her physiology, medical treatment was guesswork at best. The injury appeared to be a burn, consistent with energy weapons he'd seen during his military service before becoming a civilian pilot. Cauterized at the edges, but seeping fluid from the center where the tissue had been more severely damaged. Liam's first aid supplies were basic, designed for human physiology, but wound cleaning and protection were universal concepts. He carefully cleaned the area with sterile solution, applied antibiotic gel, and covered it with a synthetic skin patch that would protect while allowing air to reach the wound. Throughout the process, she remained unconscious, though occasionally her eyelids fluttered or her fingers twitched. With the immediate crisis addressed, Liam checked the station's external sensors. The magnetic storm had reached its peak intensity, cutting off all long-range communications and making any departure impossible for at least the next 12 hours. They were isolated together. Liam prepared a makeshift pallet for himself on the floor beside the bunk, but sleep evaded him. Questions circled in his mind. Who was she? What species? Why was she being pursued? And what would happen when she woke? He must have dozed eventually, because he woke with a start to find a pair of amber eyes staring at him from the bunk. She had pressed herself against the wall, as far from him as possible, one hand raised defensively while the other pressed against her bandaged side. Her expression was a mixture of pain, fear, and wariness. Liam raised his hands slowly, palms outward in what he hoped was a universal gesture of peace. "You're safe," he said, knowing she probably couldn't understand. "I found you in the crash. You were hurt." She responded with a series of musical sounds, her language consisting of tones and harmonics that no human vocal cord could produce. When he shook his head in incomprehension, she frowned, then pointed to her wound, then to Liam, raising her eyebrows in what seemed a question. He nodded. "Yes, I help you. Treated your wound." He mimicked cleaning and bandaging. A slight relaxation in her posture suggested understanding. She studied him intently, then the surroundings, taking in the cramped quarters of the station with its utilitarian design and mismatched equipment. After a moment, she pointed to herself and uttered a single melodic sound. "Lyra." "Your name?" Liam asked, pointing to her. When she nodded, he touched his own chest. "Liam." "Liam," she repeated, the sound oddly beautiful in her musical voice. She attempted to sit up straighter but winced, one hand going to her side. "Careful," he said, moving slowly toward a storage compartment. "You need water." "Food." He pulled out a container of water and one of his ration packs, offering them cautiously. She accepted the water, sniffing it suspiciously before taking a small sip. Her eyes widened in apparent relief, and she drank deeply. The ration pack received more scrutiny. She opened it, examined the contents, a compressed bar of synthetic protein, carbohydrates, and micronutrients, before taking a tentative bite. Her expression suggested it wasn't pleasant, but was acceptable. While she ate, Liam rummaged through storage lockers until he found what he was looking for, an old, handheld universal translator. Standard issue for deep space operations where encountering non-human species was possible, though rare. It had limited functionality with known species. For unknown languages, it required extensive sampling to begin constructing translation parameters. He activated it, holding it up for Lyra to see. "This might help us talk," he explained, knowing she wouldn't understand the words, but hoping the intent was clear. He spoke a few simple sentences, allowing the device to record his speech patterns, then gestured for her to speak. Lyra seemed to comprehend. She spoke several sentences in her melodic language while the device recorded. The translator beeped, indicating it had begun analysis, but warned that meaningful translation would require hours of language, sampling, and interaction. So began an awkward but surprisingly effective period of gestural communication. Liam showed Lyra the station's facilities, the sonic shower, the food synthesizer with its limited options, the recycling systems. She watched everything with intense interest, occasionally asking questions through gesture that Liam did his best to answer. By evening, Lyra had grown noticeably stronger. The luminescent patterns on her skin glowed more brightly, and she moved with less evidence of pain. Whatever her species, they apparently possessed remarkable healing abilities. She examined her wound with critical attention, removing Liam's bandage to reveal that the burned edges had already begun to close, the tissue beneath regenerating at a rate impossible for humans. As they shared another meal of bland ration bars, the translator chimed, indicating it had constructed preliminary translation parameters. Its mechanical voice informed them that translation would be extremely limited and literal, with approximately 30% accuracy. Lyra spoke into the device. After processing, it produced a halting, fragmented translation, "Gratitude for rescue. You danger helping me. They search." "Who is searching for you?" Liam asked, the device translating his question into a series of musical tones that made Lyra flinch. Her response came through as, "Bad ones. Want what inside me. Knowledge dangerous. Are you a scientist? A fugitive?" Liam pressed, unsure if the translations were accurate enough for such nuance. The translator struggled with her response. "Both. Made discovery. They want control. I escape." Over the next few days, As the translator slowly improved and Lyra's wound continued its remarkable healing, a clearer picture emerged. She was a scientist, a genetic engineer from a species called the Ilari. Her work had involved breakthrough research on cellular regeneration that had drawn the attention of a powerful interstellar corporation known as the Xylar Consortium. When she realized they intended to weaponize her discoveries for military applications, she had attempted to destroy her research. The consortium had responded by declaring her the property of the company, using obscure contract clauses and bribed officials to effectively enslave her. After months in captivity, forced to continue her work under guard, she had managed to escape in an emergency pod, pursued by consortium security forces. "The tracker," Liam said, telling her about the device he'd found and destroyed. "They were following you." Lyra's expression darkened. "Not only tracker. My blood, they changed it. Part of me broadcast location when active scan nearby. That's why you crashed here? The magnetic storm interferes with the signal." She nodded. "Storm hide me, but temporary. When ends, they will search this sector." The implications sank in. Liam had involved himself in something far bigger and more dangerous than he'd realized. The smart move would be to help Lyra recover, then send her on her way before the consortium traced her to his station. Self-preservation demanded it. Yet as he looked at her, this alien woman with her luminescent skin and amber eyes, who spoke of fighting against those who would pervert science for warfare, he recognized something familiar. Someone else haunted by past mistakes, seeking redemption. "How long until you could travel again?" he asked. 2, 3 of your days. Pod damage beyond repair. Need another vessel." Liam nodded slowly. "I have a ship. Small, old, but functional. Been repairing it." The atmospheric skimmer wouldn't get them off the asteroid, but it might get them to the abandoned mining outpost on the far side where a serviceable short-range transport had been left behind. Lyra's amber eyes studied him intently. Why help? Risk great. It was a fair question, one Liam had been asking himself. "I've been hiding too," he finally said, "running from mistakes. It hasn't helped. Maybe this will." Their planning session was interrupted by an alarm from the station's perimeter sensors. Liam rushed to the console, checking the readings with growing alarm. "Ship entering orbit," he reported. "Too small for commercial transport. Military or private security design." Lyra moved to his side, her expression grim. "Consortium? Storm weakening. They detect me. We need to move. Now, before they can land." Liam began gathering essential supplies: food, water, medical kit, tools. "The skimmer isn't ready, but it'll have to do. We can reach the outpost if we push it." Lyra helped, moving with efficiency despite her injury, packing only what was absolutely necessary. As they worked, she asked, "This outpost has communication equipment. Basic setup. Short range at best. Might modify. Send message to my people." She hesitated. "If reach them before consortium finds us." The unspoken question hung between them. Was Liam willing to risk everything, possibly his life, for someone he'd just met? For an alien fugitive? He looked at her and saw not an alien, but a person, brilliant, determined, fighting against forces that would use her genius for destruction. "Let's go," he said simply. They donned environmental suits, Lyra's borrowed and ill-fitting but serviceable. The skimmer protested when Liam fired up its engines, but held together as they raced across the asteroid surface. Behind them, the sensors showed the consortium ship beginning its landing approach near Liam's station. The journey to the outpost was harrowing. The skimmer stabilizers failed halfway, forcing them to navigate the increasingly rough terrain manually. A burst of static over the communication system suggested the consortium had discovered the empty station and was now scanning for them. "They're tracking the blood modifications," Lyra said grimly. "Need to mask signature." "The old mine tunnels," Liam suggested. "Heavy mineral content might disrupt their scanners. We can go underground for the last stretch." It was a desperate gamble, but their only option. Liam guided the struggling skimmer into a half-collapsed mine entrance, navigating by the skimmer's failing headlights through twisted tunnels barely wide enough to accommodate them. Twice they had to abandon the vehicle to clear rock falls, working together in frantic silence. After what felt like hours, they emerged from an air shaft near the outpost, a smaller version of Liam's station, now dark and lifeless. They powered up only the essential systems to avoid detection, working by emergency lighting to assess their resources. The transport ship was there as Liam remembered, covered in dust but intact. A survey of the outpost supplies yielded enough fuel cells to power it for a short interstellar jump. Not enough to reach any major system, but perhaps enough to rendezvous with an Illyri vessel if Lyra could contact her people. As Lyra worked to modify the communication array using components scavenged from their environmental suits, Liam prepared the transport for departure. Hours passed in focused work, both aware that each minute brought the consortium searchers closer. They were nearly ready when Lyra suddenly stiffened, her luminescent patterns flaring bright. "They're close," she whispered. "Active scan." Moments later, Liam's jury-rig perimeter alert confirmed her warning. 3 small craft were approaching the outpost from different directions. "Search patterns. We need more time," Lyra said, frantically working to complete the communications modification. Message almost ready to send. Liam made a quick decision. "Keep working. I'll slow them down." He grabbed the mining charges he'd found in storage, old but still functional, and headed for the tunnels. "Liam, no," Lyra called after him. "Too dangerous." He paused at the doorway, looking back at this strange woman who had crashed into his life and shattered his isolation. "Trust me, I know what I'm doing." It was the first time in 3 years he'd said those words with confidence. Liam placed the charges at strategic junctions in the mine tunnels, creating a sequence that would collapse access routes without bringing down the entire system on their heads. As he worked, he heard the sound of engines above. The searchers had arrived. The first charge detonated just as armored figures began descending into the main tunnel. The controlled collapse sent them scrambling backward, temporarily blocked but not deterred. Liam triggered the second sequence, buying precious minutes as he raced back to the outpost. He found Lyra surrounded by console components, her hands moving with incredible speed as she made final adjustments. "Message sent," she said without looking up. Response received. "Help coming, but not soon enough." Outside, the sound of cutting tools on metal indicated the consortium forces were breaking through the outpost's outer doors. Liam sealed the inner compartment, knowing it would buy them only moments. "Transport ready?" Lyra asked, abandoning the communication array. "Fueled and programmed. But they'll shoot us down before we clear the asteroid's gravity." Lyra's amber eyes held his gaze. "Not if they want me alive." She pulled aside the fabric covering her wounded side, revealing that the regenerated skin now contained the same luminescent patterns as the rest of her body, but forming different, more complex designs. "Encoded research. Only I can access. They need me functional." The inner door groaned as cutting tools began working on it. Liam grabbed the last of their supplies and motioned toward the transport's airlock. "Time to test your theory." They sealed themselves inside the transport as the inner door gave way. Through the viewport, Liam saw the first of the consortium forces enter. Humanoid figures in sleek black armor with reflective faceplates that concealed any features. Their weapons were raised, but not firing. One step forward, helmet speakers projecting a voice unnaturally smooth and reasonable. "Dr. Lyraval, your escape attempt is impressive, but concluded. The consortium has legal custody of you and your research. Surrender now, and your companion will be released unharmed." Lyra's response was to slam her hand onto the transport's launch sequence. The engines fired, vibrating through the small vessel as it lifted from the outpost's landing pad. Warning shots flashed past the viewport, deliberately missing. "Told you," Lyra said grimly. "They won't risk damaging their property." The transport broke free of the outpost's docking clamps, accelerating toward space. Behind them, the consortium forces were already returning to their ships to give pursuit. "They're faster," Liam noted, watching the tactical display. "We won't reach the rendezvous before they catch us." Lyra studied the navigation system, then pointed to a dense asteroid field at the edge of the system. "There, maneuverability advantage." Liam's pilot instincts agreed. Their transport was smaller, more agile than the pursuit vessels. In the chaotic environment of an asteroid field, skill would matter more than raw speed or firepower. He altered course, pushing the transport to its limits as they raced toward the field. Behind them, the consortium ships adjusted to match, closing the distance with their superior engines. As they entered the asteroid field, Liam's training took over. His hands moved across the controls with the confidence that had once made him one of the most sought-after pilots in the Viridia system. The transport darted between massive rocks, skimmed past slowly rotating mountains of ice and iron, executed maneuvers that strained both the ship's structural integrity and the pursuit vessel's ability to follow. One consortium ship miscalculated, clipping an asteroid and spinning out of control. The second fell back, taking a more cautious approach. But the third, larger than the others and likely carrying the mission commander, matched Liam's every move with equal skill. "We can't outrun them forever," Liam said, executing a tight spiral around a cluster of smaller asteroids. "Fuel cells are draining fast." Lyra had been monitoring the communication array, making continuous adjustments. Now she looked up with renewed hope. "Don't need forever." Ilari's ship approaching. "High speed." She pointed to a new signal appearing at the edge of their sensor range. The consortium commander must have detected it too. The pursuit intensified, weapons now firing despite the risk to Lyra, attempting to disable the transport before help could arrive. A shot grazed their port stabilizer, sending the transport into a spin that Liam barely controlled. Another hit would end their flight. In desperation, he cut engines entirely, letting the transport drop into the shadow of a massive asteroid, powering down all systems except life support. "What are you doing?" Lyra whispered in the sudden darkness. "Old smuggler's trick," Liam murmured. "Playing dead." They drifted, silent and dark, as the consortium vessel passed overhead, scanners sweeping but confused by the asteroid's mineral content. For agonizing minutes, they waited, hearing only their own breathing in the quiet cabin. Then a brilliant flash of light illuminated the viewport as weapons fire, not directed at them, streaked through space above. The Ilari had arrived. Liam powered up systems in time to witness the battle. The Ilari vessel was unlike anything he'd seen. Organic in appearance, its hull shifting and flowing like a living thing. It moved with impossible grace, weapons firing with precision that disabled rather than destroyed the consortium ships. "Your people are impressive," Liam said as Lyra established communication with the Ilari vessel. The rescue was swift after that. The Ilari extended some kind of energy field that enveloped their damaged transport, drawing it into a docking bay that seemed to form specifically to receive them. When the airlock opened, they were greeted by beings similar to Lyra, tall, blue-skinned, with the same luminescent patterns, though none glowed as brightly as hers. They spoke rapidly in their musical language, obvious concern and relief in their tones as they escorted Lyra and Liam to a medical chamber. There, Lyra's wound was treated with technology that seemed to manipulate light itself, accelerating the already impressive healing process. Through the translator, now working more effectively with multiple language samples to analyze, Liam learned that Lyra was not just any scientist, but one of the Ilari's most brilliant minds. Her research had implications far beyond weapons. It could potentially cure degenerative diseases across multiple species, extend lifespans, even restore damaged ecosystems. The consortium saw only profit and power, one of the Ilari explained. They would have corrupted discoveries meant to heal. In the days that followed, as the Ilari vessel carried them far from the asteroid belt and the pursuing consortium, Liam found himself increasingly drawn into Lyra's world. She insisted he remain with her during debriefings, valuing his perspective and occasionally reaching for his hand when recounting their escape. At night, or what passed for night on the ship cycle, they would meet in the observation chamber, watching unfamiliar stars through a viewport that somehow magnified specific regions with just a thought. There, they would talk for hours about her research, about his past as a pilot, about the guilt that had driven him to isolation, and the determination that had driven her to escape. "You saved my life," she told him one night, her luminescent patterns glowing softly in the dimmed light. "Not just from the crash or the consortium. For believing I had no choice but to run forever." Liam shook his head. "We saved each other. I was slowly dying on that asteroid, haunted by mistakes I couldn't fix." She moved closer, her cool hand finding his. "In my culture, there's a concept, Eshvara. No direct translation exists in your language. More than gratitude, more than friendship, or even what you call love. It is a recognition of souls that balance and complete each other." Liam felt something shift between them, an acknowledgement of what had been building since those desperate days on the asteroid. "I'm not sure I deserve that kind of recognition." Deserving is not relevant to Eshvara. It simply is. Her amber eyes studied him with an intensity that made him feel truly seen for the first time in years. "Among my people, when Eshvara is recognized, it creates a bond. What humans might call marriage, but deeper. Lyra, I'm human. You're Ilari. Our lives, our worlds are completely different." Her luminescent patterns flickered in what he had come to recognize as amusement. "Are they? We both sought to heal, both made mistakes, both found redemption in each other. Difference is surface. Beneath, connection." Before Liam could respond, an alarm sounded throughout the ship. They rushed to the command center, where the Ilari crew monitored a tactical display showing multiple consortium vessels converging on their position. "How did they find us?" Liam demanded. The Ilari captain's expression was grim. "Unknown. Possibility of traitor among displaced Ilari refugees. Possibility of long-range tracking technology previously unknown to us." Lyra's hand went to her side, where the wound had fully healed but left a distinctive pattern in her luminescence. They developed better scanners for the blood modifications. The tactical situation was dire. The Ilari vessel was fast but outgunned against the consortium fleet. They could run, but eventually would be cornered. "We need a permanent solution," Lyra said, her scientific mind already analyzing possibilities. "As long as I carry this research, they will never stop hunting." "Then we make it worthless to them," Liam suggested, an idea forming. Working together over the next several hours, Liam and Lyra developed a plan that was equal parts brilliant and desperate. Using the Ilari ship's advanced communication technology, they would broadcast the complete research findings, not to one location, but to thousands across multiple systems, including medical facilities, research institutions, and public information networks. "If everyone has it, no one controls it," Lyra explained to the Ilari Council that had gathered to evaluate their proposal. "The consortium seeks exclusive ownership. This renders their pursuit meaningless." There were concerns. The research was preliminary, potentially dangerous in the wrong hands, not ready for wide distribution. But the alternative was perpetual pursuit, with the constant risk that the consortium would eventually capture Lyra and weaponize her discoveries anyway. The decision was made. As the consortium fleet closed in, the Ilari vessel positioned itself near a major communication relay, enhancing the signal to reach far beyond its normal range. Lyra, with Liam's assistance, prepared the data for transmission, including warnings about potential misuse and detailed explanations of ethical applications. The consortium, realizing what was happening, launched a desperate attack. The Ilari vessel shuddered under weapons impact, systems failing as they maintained position long enough to complete the transmission. Liam found himself back at flight controls, executing evasive maneuvers while Lyra and the Ilari technicians worked to ensure the data reached its destinations. "Transmission complete," Lyra announced as another hit rocked the vessel. "Confirmed receipt at 74% of targeted locations. Sufficient for complete distribution via secondary channels." The Ilari captain immediately ordered maximum acceleration away from the battle zone. Though damaged, the vessel surged forward, breaking through the consortium blockade with a series of maneuvers that left Liam breathless with admiration. Hours later, when they had reached relative safety and begun repairs, Confirmation came through various channels. The research was spreading rapidly through scientific communities across multiple systems. The consortium had withdrawn its pursuit, their exclusive claim to the discoveries now irreparably compromised. In the aftermath, as the Ilari vessel limped toward their homeworld for repairs, Liam found himself at a crossroads. He had no home to return to, no place in the wider galaxy he had abandoned years ago. When Lyra found him in their usual spot in the observation chamber, staring out at unfamiliar stars, she seemed to understand his thoughts without words. "Stay with me," she said simply. "With us. Your skills, your courage, both valued among Ilari." Liam turned to her, taking in the now familiar glow of her skin, the amber eyes that had come to mean home more than any place ever had. "Would I be welcome? An alien among your people? You would be welcome as my Ashvara." She took his hand, placing it over the pattern on her side where the wound had been. In our tradition, when lives are bound through survival and purpose, it creates a bond no authority can deny. "You would be, in your terms, my husband." The word should have frightened him. Commitment, responsibility, connection, all the things he had fled to that lonely asteroid. Instead, it felt right. Not an ending, but a beginning. "I took in a wounded alien fugitive," Liam said with a smile that felt rusty but genuine. "And now she calls me her husband." Lyra's luminescence brightened in response to his joy. "Is that acceptance?" "It's more than that." He drew her closer. "It's a promise. Whatever comes next, we face it together." Their lips met, cool against warm, alien yet familiar, as the ship carried them toward a future neither could have imagined in their separate exiles. Behind them, the stars of Liam's past receded. Ahead lay uncertainty, challenge, and the promise of redemption found in the most unexpected place, in the arms of someone from beyond the stars who had crashed into his life and called him home.